right. Off of his perch from talking parks all day, Dan Illman joins us here on the Horse Racing Happy Hour. It is a night before Thanksgiving edition of the show. Dan, did you know, keeping with the Happy Hour theme, this is one of the 3 biggest drinking nights of the year, alongside St. Patrick's Day and New Year's Eve. Were you aware of that?
I was not aware of that. Thank you so much for telling me, and I'm happy that you did inform me this. But I think that for you, Friday might be a big drinking day because something tells me that you're doing your 2-hour show. If this little Twitter poll that you conducted continues on its way, you'll be sitting in the frozen tundra under the Twin Spires. So maybe a little hot toddy.
I will put it this way. Kevin Kirstein, good guy, helps out with the media stuff, does a bunch of their releases over there. Made sure I had an outdoor space for Friday, so I'll be there. It's happening. Yeah, these are things. Yes, I'll be there on Friday if you want to hang out, of course, at Horse Happy Hour, horseracinghappyhour@gmail.com. Thanks to everyone who pinged us to get a free sweatshirt last week, and so we sent out those this week as well. So hopefully those will be in your mail sometime very, very soon. I even sent one to New York. I don't even know what to do about that. You're going to have to put away the Nova Southeast. I'm just kidding. You're always going to wear that on the show.
Proud of Nova Southeastern. I mean, 2 years ago, undefeated national champions. I believe they were in D2 basketball. And then last year, they made it to beaten in the buzzer beater in the national championship game, but unbeaten this year, making me proud again to be a Nova Southeastern Shark. Although, of course, when I went and graduated in 97, we were the Knights.
Oh, was that right? Okay. All right. Yeah. And is like Sharks, like it applies also to the women's team kind of thing? Was that the idea that like Knights was not applicable to women's teams? This is kind of like,
I guess it was the Lady Knights back then. And now they're, I guess the Sharks still. So it was a different era.
It's a different time, Dan.
Yeah.
A different time, if you will. He joins us from New York. I'm here in front of my, this is a fireplace, Dan. Are you allowed to have those in New York? I actually don't know the rules anymore. Is that a thing?
We are allowed to have them out in the burbs. And some people are very bourgeoisie. They have fake ones in their giant apartments on Fifth Avenue.
Speaking of bourgeoisie, we'll talk and Fifth Avenue. We'll have Steve Kornacki on next week to preview the Scar Mile. So we'll talk to
perfect segue.
There it is. It's perfect segue there for sure. Dan joins us. I was out there last week for both the Shaluki and for the Commonwealth Turf last week. We saw, frankly, Too Sharp win that Shaluki. I have no idea where Zach is on replays and getting those together, but that was a horse, all the questions, Dan, of the stretch out, the distance, all of those things, answered all of them with absolute perfection, frankly. Anything to say about Too Sharp other than wow?
Wow. I mean, it was a super performance. Yes, she did get an easy lead in that race, but it never looked like she was ever going to lose from 6 strides out of the gate. She just looked very comfortable. And I think at around the 5/16 pole, you're saying, well, she's going to start getting tired, right? She's never really gone this distance. Here's the question. She's going fast on the lead. She was great in the stretch. She looked tremendous. Phil Bauer's just doing a sensational job. Jonathan's Way, of course, he's going to have in the Kentucky Jockey Club a little bit later this weekend, hoping to continue a fantastic year for the Bauer barn. And Too Sharp and Jonathan's Way, they worked sort of in company last week. We'll talk about that in a bit.
Yeah, we'll get into that race when we get done with the Friday card. I'll be out there, like I mentioned, for the Clark Day. Frankly, it's Clark 150, Dan, and I think in horse racing, we sort of just take for granted that there's things like 150 that just happen in our sport all the time. What did we just run? Belmont 154 or something like that? I mean, just these, these sorts of incredible numbers. And the Clark, has been run every year that the Kentucky Derby's been run since 1875. When you think of these older races, and we'll get back to the Commonwealth Turf in a second, where does the Clark rank on your, obviously the Breeders' Cup Classic is going to be number one of those 2-turn dirt races for older horses. Suburban, the Jockey Club at now at Saratoga, that kind of stuff. Like, where does this one rank? Is it a top 5, top 10 kind of race?
It was probably a top 5 kind of race 9-10 years ago, maybe a little bit more 15 years ago when Blame was winning it. And you had Will Take Charge win this race, and the Clark was a legitimate grade 1. I think the Breeders' Cup is kind of watered down, unfortunately, the Clark a little bit as it's watered down the Cigar Mile towards the end of the year, because after the Breeders' Cup, a lot of horses are simply knocked out and they're just not ready, to go another demanding route race against top competition. For me, the Clark is, it's such a historically important certain race, whether it's, Whirl Away winning from all the way back in the 40s to Giant Oak winning the only way Giant Oak could know how, and that would be by disqualification. There have been a lot of happy Clark memories over the years. I would say it's still one of the 10 favorites, the Clark, the Stephen Foster.
Yeah, that's right. The Stephen Foster for sure every summer. It's so funny too, Dan. I think this year we had reasonable weather for the Stephen Foster this year. It was only like 8 degrees or something, and it's going to be like 28 degrees on Friday. So there you go. A little full Kentucky experience there, if you will, between the summer and winter months here. Getting into the end of the, sort of big time graded stakes season, moving our, attention to places like Gulfstream and all that other stuff. But first, we did have something happen, and I'm on the wrong stream here, but we got a comment from a local guy here. Steve watches the races out at Churchill. Baffert gets that win today at Churchill. He was there. Frankly, Darren Rogers tweeting out about it. You think fence is mended here? How did the horse look? All the things.
Fences better be mended because he's going to be here and he's going to be here to stay. I have a feeling this time around. I mean, it's nice for Bob that he doesn't have to pay to get into Churchill Downs now if he wants to go. Barnes, of course, was the well-hyped 2-year-old today, the big expensive purchase, and he scored. I think he got an 87 Beyer speed figure. I think Andy Beyer already has sent that out, and Daily Racing Form has tweeted that out. But he had to work today. He beat a pretty decent Wayne Lucas 2-year-old, and I know that horse has already run 4 or 5 times, but look at the competition that horse was in against. He was in against Chancer McPatrick up in New York. So that was a battle-tested horse. I'm sure a lot of folks were thinking Barnes was going to win by the length of the stretch today, and people are going to go crazy about the Kentucky Derby. But an 87 Beyer in the first career start is nothing to sneeze about. This is a horse that I have a feeling is real serious.
Yeah, no, that's right. And frankly, at some point when the purse is almost 2.5 times what you can run for out west, we're going to just see more Bafferts here. Is that right? I mean, in my opinion, at least.
I don't see why not. Again, it seems like if Baffert's not running against Baffert out there, who's he running against? We've even seen it the last few weeks in these 2-year-old races. 5-horse fields. Baffert's got 3. Baffert's got 4. And you've mentioned it on this show many times in the past. Now the point races are going to be skewed where, if we got these short fields, it's going to hurt them. Right. Bob's going to have to move things around. We know he likes to run at Oaklawn Park in the winter. That's really a base of operations for him. But why not get his 2-year-old started at Churchill Downs and get experience over the track where they run the Kentucky Derby?
That's exactly right. I think we're going to see plenty more of that. Zach, do we have the Commonwealth Turf? You can jump on the show. It's totally fine. We're very professional here. Obviously on the Horse Racing Happy Hour.
Well, one of us is.
I wear a sweatshirt with a smoking horse on it that also is on the microphone here. He's smiling because we have
no replays. One day we will be
all right.
Famous and sports.
Boy, I disagree. I disagree that one day it's going to work out for us. Yeah, I disagree. I'm going to get rid of Zach. There we go. Okay, so the Lagados wins the Commonwealth. Dan, I gave him out last week. Do I get credit for picking an 0 for 9 this year horse?
You do, because you kept the faith on a horse that I personally had trouble keeping the faith with. I'd lost a lot of money on Laganos this year because I think like you, I saw the potential. No, and like you, I think I saw some troubled trips and excuses and some really good efforts, and he just couldn't break through. And I think for some handicappers, whether you're right or whether you're wrong in a situation like the Commonwealth Turf, and you were right and I was wrong, you have to cut bait sometimes with a horse that just cost you money. You see them in the PPs all the time. It's like the siren song. You're called to them, and you just have to resist. And one day they're going to score and they're going to win. But more often than not in the case of Laganos, credit to you, more often in the case of not, when those horses do win, they win at under late odds. You don't need them.
Yeah, I purely went on his last effort at Keeneland where he finished like 7th, but he was behind like 8 horses for the whole ride. Was trying to make a trip, and I know you saw all these things for sure, but I thought, okay, switch to Pratt. Pratt's, he's doing the thing right now. Maybe he'll keep him closer to the pace. I don't know. I'll just give him out on top, and there he goes. So there you go.
And we had another situation with at Zia Park earlier this week. Dematic. How many times do you lose money on Dematic? And he finally comes through and finds the right field. That guy Asmussen knows how to spot his horses. That's one thing. He understands talent and understands how to make money with what he's got.
You and I have not. You have not been on this show since I saw you at Breeders' Cup. I was looking actually. Last time you were on was in early October. You gave out Sierra Leone. Great call, by the way. I talked to you, and then 20 minutes later, Issel was on the show, and he gave out Sierra Leone, and I still didn't like land on that horse in any kind of substantial way. And I'm like, wait
Well,
a
it
minute.
just shows the
Looking
amount
back,
of.
like Illman and Issel, what am I doing here? Yeah.
I think the minute Issel put you on, you got a little sour. I don't blame you.
Okay. All right.
I mean, listen, Sierra Leone must be a nice horse because that's a lot of weight to overcome right there. That's a lot of weight, man.
I went to my buddy's kids' like little league game once for some reason. And Marty Brenneman was dating a woman who had a kid on the team. Do you know that name? Is that the Reds announcer?
I know Marty Brenneman, yes.
Oh, yeah. And so Marty's there, and his soon-to-be stepkid, or whatever the kid's relation is to him, is just dogging it to first base. And he yells out in front of this entire group of parents, "Hey, kid, drop the refrigerator." And I'll never forget it, man. And that's it. When Issel picks a horse, the horse has to drop a refrigerator. You're totally right.
Thank you. Thank you. And you're man enough to say it. And I'm happy that you said it because you'll be sitting in close attendance to him a lot sooner than I will be. Yes. And you might be flat as a pancake next time.
That's right. We'll talk to Issel on Friday. That's right. Yeah, no, it's not good for me at all. That's right. But no, Breeders' Cup, we haven't talked since, man. Obviously, Sierra Leone stands out. Did he move to the top of the 3-year-olds for you? Because he did for me.
I think he moved to the top of the 3-year-olds. He and Fierceness are 1-2. And again, if you want to make an argument for Fierceness, sure, because he ran a great race in the Breeders' Cup, up and on that really strong pace all the way throughout. He never quit. He ran great. Both of those horses, they're 1-2. It's a shame Dornock retired because when you look at the season he put on, he's kind of the forgotten horse, but he's going to end up, I think, as number 3.
We'll see. We'll have the Remsen next week. A reminder, 3 Grade 1 winners came out of that race last year. Sierra Leone, Dornock, of course. And then Domestic Product was in that race. We forget he comes back. He wins over a mile at Saratoga earlier this year as well. So, look at that race next week and see if we can't find our great horses for next year. Just as a fan of the sport, Dan, are you surprised, happy, all of the emotions that we're getting horses like Sierra Leone for their 4-year-old season, Fierceness. I mean, this is the stuff we've been asking for as fans for many, many years. And it feels like there's different ways to unpack when you get home from a trip. And some people just leave their luggage and they don't open it up and they don't do those things. And other people, it's right away, they get it all out. I feel like it's almost like we had the luggage sitting around and then we decided that we're going to do the laundry and it all fell out at once. We got all the great news at once. And I got to tell you, just as a fan of races like the Clark, frankly, this is such great news.
And just think, you've got a Torpedo Anna working at the fairgrounds. You've got Mystic Dan. Don't forget about him. He's coming back for a 4-year-old campaign. It's really nice to see again. We've been used to, and it's unfortunate, our best horses being retired to stud almost immediately after their greatest successes. And it's very hard for the game to build a fan base. It's hard for the game to build a fan base when our top stars run 3-4 times a year anyway, but it's real hard when they retire right at the peak of their popularity. So hopefully we'll see Sierra Leone. Hopefully we'll see Fierceness in races like either the Pegasus World Cup. I'm assuming they'll be heading for races overseas like the Saudi Cup and the Dubai World Cup, because how can you pass up that money? But hopefully after we get through those races, then they come back to us here in the States and we get them for a second half of the year, because that's where the excitement is. We want a 4-year-old crop that, let's be honest, was lacking this year going into the Breeders' Cup Classic, which is why 1, 2, 3 in the Classic, 3-year-olds.
Yeah. How good was this 3-year-old class?
That was a good class. I mean, I think it was a class that it took a long time for racing fans and myself included to appreciate. Sierra Leone, how many times was it close but no cigar, although you knew it was there if he got the right setup in a truly run race, which is what he got in the Classic. Fierceness, had that maybe unfair reputation. Oh, he's an in and outer. Oh, he has one good race. He has one bad race. What happened in the Derby? Oh, he's no good. He's good. He's very, very good. The Japanese horse, I think, validated anyone that liked the Japanese horse. He ran big in this race. He ran big in the Kentucky Derby. And I thought we had down the road from Mystic Dan to other 3-year-olds, Seize the Gray. What an underrated season there. I mean, are you kidding me? Winning the Preakness and the Pennsylvania Derby, just coming from nowhere to doing it. This is a very good crop. I always have problems, ranking one against the other. It's almost impossible to do era to era, but a good crop. And again, excited to see many of them back at 4. And of course, Torpedo Anna, excitement personified.
The thing we tell ourselves, I think, when we do this year round and we're handicapping and do those things, we always tell ourselves we're not going to penalize horses for how they perform in the Kentucky Derby. And then we totally penalize horses for
Always.
performing the Kentucky Derby every time, especially if it sucks, right? Yeah.
No, especially the hyped ones. I mean, I remember Holy Bull back in the day, and this is a long, long time ago, and he was going into the Kentucky Derby as the big favorite. And listen, he just didn't run very well that day, and Holy Bull emerged from that race, and guess what? He won the Met Mile as a 3-year-old, I believe. Then he won the Haskell, then he won the Travers, and he kept on rolling. You can't penalize a horse for one bad race, especially if, like in the Kentucky Derby, you can make the excuse that the pace and the situation might have gotten that horse beat. And you could argue the pace got that horse beat in the Breeders' Cup Classic because they were really going.
Oh, and he did so much of the work.
Oh,
too. I mean,
all the work.
Yes, just terrific in that race. Around here they sell. You can get all the Derby glasses. I even have my Derby 142 pint glass tonight. Why not? From 2016. It's a Nyquist year, folks. And they sell them locally. They're made of plastic, and it's got a cartoon horse on it, and it's called the Unofficial Derby Cup, and it has all the last place finishers on it.
That's cute.
It's super
Well,
clever.
a lot of your top picks, I believe, are on that cup.
All of them. But
really,
just all of them. Yeah, all of them. Yeah. And so I always remind people, I always say, if you think you know about a horse after the Kentucky Derby, look at this name, and Whitmore's on that cup.
Yeah.
And that's one of those horses that they really, it's that kind of stuff, right? Mendelssohn's on that cup. Like there's really, really good horses on that cup.
The Derby is such a stressful race for many horses. In the case of Whitmore, it was a situation where at that point in time, the connections, I'm sure, had an inkling, but who knew that he was going to be an exceptional sprinter down the road? Mendelssohn, of course, made his bones for Aidan O'Brien overseas, mostly on turf. And of course, has turned out to be a really, really good stallion. The Kentucky Derby just wasn't a race for him. We saw horses like Thunder Snow. Remember when he threw a fit in the Kentucky Derby a while back? He only won the Dubai World Cup twice. So it's a pretty good group. Again, the Derby's the Derby, and you have to be kissed by an angel to win the Derby, except for Baffert, who's been kissed by 17 angels.
That's right. All the angels. And they kissed him today, of course, with a 2-year-old win at Churchill Downs. He's Dan Illman. I'm Louis Rebel. Thanks for hanging out with us on the Horse Racing Happy Hour. We are presented by Manscaped, manscaped.com. Promo code Horse Racing, 20% off, shipped to your house. If you are done with a barber and just need some help with your own grooming, cannot recommend enough. They've got a bunch of great options for you on that way. Got a 15-year-old. He's learning how to shave. We even have the foil guard for him to learn how to shave. That's been a really nice thing for us in our house as well. So whatever you're looking for this holiday season, use our promo code Horse Racing at manscaped.com. You get 20% off and free shipping to your house as well. Our guy Steve still hanging out with the show, and I very much appreciate that. Got to remember I got two up in front of me. Say this 3-year-old group is similar to a football conference that beats up on each other and then it gets called a garbage conference. You know what? I don't hate that kind of analogy where, you might have a 2-loss team at the top of your conference, but boy, that it was a bunch of good football. Maybe Nova Southeastern is exempt from this, of course, right?
Well,
they don't lose games. You understand?
They don't lose. I mean, they've lost once in 3 years. So I don't really know, I don't know anything about that.
Right. Losses.
My days as the radio announcer for WNSU Cable FM, I believe you could get it in the school cafeteria, and if you had a special box that no one installed in the dorms, and it was NAIA Division II back then.
Let's go. I'm told, is he? What you just described is how many people get to listen to this podcast. So there you go. All right. So let's move on to the handicapping portion of the show. My fake producer that's standing over here, fake producer. It is Clark Day on Friday. One of my very favorite days of the year. Wake up out of a turkey coma on Friday. I do have to ask, Dan, are you a Thanksgiving family? You guys into it?
I am a Thanksgiving family. We all gather around the good bird, little bit of stuffing, a little bit of cranberry sauce. Got to have the cranberry sauce. That's the key. But then, I'm a big pumpkin pie fan. Right. The family, not really a pumpkin pie family. They like the apple pie. And listen, I love a good apple pie as much as anybody else. But it's Thanksgiving. Got to have a pumpkin pie.
I hear you.
Come on.
Well, you get both, right?
Divorced in some states.
The good ones, the good states, folks. All right, so pick 4 starts in race 9. It's an optional claimer, $80,000. If your horse is in for the tag, $134,000 purse. Mile and a 16th on the dirt. I think, Dan, I've got 2 favorite distances at Churchill, the mile and a 16th, where it's that quick turn around. I love the 1.125 turf courses where they start that full stretch at the turf course. So we get one of those here. This is for fillies and mares. 3 and up, non-2 lifers, Dan. Interesting one here, despite the short field. We do get a short favorite in Amber Cascade. She's been really good her last couple out.
Yeah, she's simply the horse to beat on the cold dope, isn't she? She's coming into this race the right way for Cherie DeVaux. And I know Cherie's gotten off to a little bit of a cold start at Churchill Downs, but she's just had a sensational year. And again, this filly just seems to be knocking on the door. Now, she doesn't have a ton of early speed. Maybe that could work against her in a short field where the only speeds might be the 2 Ichiban and the 3 Reagan's Flame. But if you're playing this sequence, I think you got to use Amber Crusade. If you want to get a little bit nutty, I wonder if the 4 Sultry Lass is going to improve with the blinkers off. Because I'm starting to get a little bit tired of her act watching her races. 2 starts back, she has the clear lead, she gets beat. Last time out, it looks like she's got dead aim turning for home, and she just doesn't want to go through along the inside. Maybe the blinkers off is going to help get her over the top. So I would kind of use her as a backup, but Amber Cascade looks real good on paper to me.
Yeah, I agree with you. Cat's Cave is in here. I got to tell you, I think the 7-2 here, Dan, is because Luis Saez is on quite the tear at Churchill Downs. Many conversations between you and me, and a nice joke with Mike Beer at Breeders' Cup. Go ahead, that's a humble brag. You can drink. That I got to see Mike. He's always Mike, isn't he? There's no other version of that dude. He's always just the same dude.
He's the same dude. Yeah.
All the time.
He's cooler than the other side of the pillow. Where do you think he learned that from?
Very jealous.
Come on, right here. Protege.
Damn it.
Come on.
Just in the sunglasses. It's like just
Bregman. Alex Bregman comes up to him.
Hair.
You're my favorite handicapper, he says. He buys him a beer. It's great. He's Beer's just standing there like, who are you? He's like,
oh man, these are the stories I need. I love it. Oh man, Beer's out there dominating. It's great. Cat's Cave. I think it's horses 7-2. I think he's really it's needless mismatch, but I agree. Cat's Cave in here, I think it's 7-2 because of the jock. Do you agree, or do you think this horse has a serious shot? Because frankly,
I think this filly's going to take some money simply again because there may not be a ton of speed in this race.
Yeah,
it's a short field, and at least we know she has speed. She has a couple of races that make her interesting, and I think turning back in distance also might be what the doctor ordered. I think last time out, it was a little bit far for her, 1 mile and a 16th. She'll be in the thick of things turning for home, but I think you made a good point. She's 7-2, and maybe 7-2 against this group is just a little bit light for me. So I would have to need a little bit more unless I was looking at some real bombs in the other legs of this pick. But yeah, I'm going to concentrate on the 6 and the 4.
I know we joke a little with you about the route to sprint angle or the cutback in general that you seem to enjoy as a horse like Reagan's Flame that's going to be stretching out here, Dan. Is there anything in particular about this horse's form that you think will allow that to happen? Or is this more just, hey, in a race where the best horse is going to be coming from off the pace, maybe this horse could just be out front, stay out front?
Well, she has good sprinter out form in the past. It's interesting that these connections, and Lindsay Schultz is a good trainer, hasn't been more aggressive stretching this horse out in the past. In the second lifetime start, I know it was a turf race they stretched her out in, but she was able to carry her speed a long way through a long stretch at the fairgrounds. Her speed plays. I think she is the speed of the speed. I think she's going to get to the front, and we'll just find out how far she wants to go. If you want to make just simply an excuse, last time out, she can't is a sloppy track and a really hot horse. The horse that beat her is really, really good. But now she's stepping up, she's facing older horses and stretching out. And that could be a little bit of a question as well, taking on some salty 4-year-olds.
We saw the Commonwealth last week. We will see the Mrs. Revere on Friday. It is the 3-year-old filly version of that race, 1 mile and a 16th on the turf course at Churchill Downs. 300,000 in the kitty. This is a grade 2. Some interesting horses in here, Dan. This has been one of the, if we're going by eclipse categories, I guess, the 3-year-old filly turf division. Good luck. It's been all over the place. Frankly, it's been a really good betting kind of group of horses for us this year. Buchu's in here at 5-1 with Irad. I think she's really interesting. Kehoe Beach, who's never been in stakes company, comes in here at 3-1. Frankie Dettori in town to ride there. A bunch of horses that I think are longer odds. I think Pharaoh's Wine is a very serious, the 4-horse here, 30-1, serious candidate to be an exacta trifecta kind of play. Where did you land on top at least here?
Really wide open race. I had trouble landing on only one. I think in the pick, I'm probably going to have to use at least three horses.
Okay.
I guess if I had to give a tepid nod, it would be to Kehoe Beach, simply because I respect her speed. I think Frankie's just going to put her up front
I
and
agree.
see how far she goes and see how good she is. But she sure looked good last time out. I know she was odds on, and that was a field she was supposed to handle, and she kind of got loose on the lead. But I really like the way she was striding home at the very end of that race. But I can understand anyone that says she's stepping up in class. She might be a relatively short price. A horse like Pinup Betty is a horse that I really want to kind of focus on in here, because they threw her into the Wolves last time out in the Queen Elizabeth II against one of the better 3-year-old fillies the entire crop. That's She Feels Pretty. The race before that at Kentucky Downs, I'm just willing to throw that out. I don't trust anything that happens there, especially bad performances. And before that, she was in good form. She's a tactically inclined horse that I think will work out a good trip. I feel the same way with Poolside with Slim, who got a very good ground-saving trip last time out. And unfortunately for her, she drew post 12, so it's unlikely she's going to get that trip again. But maybe that just helps her price. I think from the morning line standpoint, she might be the best play of them all at 6-1 on the line. So I think my plays would be focusing on the 3, 6, and the 12.
Yeah, I think the 12, if that horse is 5-1 or longer, that's the play, right? I mean, we get Johnny V. It's not as though we're going from Frankie to Tori to me, right? I mean, like this is, this is not a step down in any way in my mind, at least. I'm interested here, Dan. The Manushka's in here as run one race stateside, 6 times hitting the board and 8 tries on the turf, 1 for 1 at the distance. Obviously, that was last out at Keeneland. See if that translates. Her issue, man, big field, and she's going to have to do all of her running late. And I worry about that, trying to make that trip. But we've seen this meet at Churchill Downs. The only reason I think she's got a shot here is if you can get to the middle of the turf course, 5th lane, 6th lane, 7th lane, you're gonna get good run. That's the spot to be. We had Travis Stone on a couple weeks ago. He said the same thing. So if Tyler can get this horse into that kind of spot, Dan, I think she'll be in a good spot. I'm really interested in her. Tyler had a nice day today. He looked back to being Tyler again, which is good. I was surprised how much time he needed off, but that was a nasty fall last Saturday, so not too terribly surprising, I guess. But yeah, Manushka's an interesting one to me here.
She's certainly a contender in this race, to be sure. I mean, just look at the company lines overseas. I mean, she was running against the best of the best in France, and she was no surprise when she made her stateside debut. They bet the heck out of her in a full field. And like many European horses, listen, they're not great from the gate at times. It often puts them behind the 8 ball, especially in terms of a full field. But that's what happened last time. And you saw that burst of speed that she showed. She was simply too good for those horses. And something tells me she fits with this competition. 9-2 is a fair price. I'm really interested to see how this race is going to get bet. Something tells me that there's going to be a wise guy horse that takes all the money and we'll be like, how'd that happen?
Is it Buchu? I think Buchu wins this race.
To me, Buchu's always been like a Keeneland lover. Haven't you always been like, oh, look at Buchu. She won the Jessamine as a 2-year-old. Look at Buchu. She won the Appalachian as a 3-year-old. But she did run well in the Regret here. I'll give her that when she was beaten by Pinup Betty. I don't know. I've always wondered about her that to me, she's kind of always reached this plateau. And she's never really, gotten a lot better since late in her 2-year-old, earlier in her 3-year-old campaign. I'm getting to the point if I'm wondering if she ever is going to get better. She is a closer in a big field. She should get some pace. But is she the best closer in the race? Would you rather take her other than the French filly, who to me has more of an explosive burst of speed, while Buchu could be a plodding type?
Yeah, I think it's Manushka. That's why I brought her up first. But yeah, it's the Buchu pick, by the way, is partly because I think I'm going to leave her off my tickets, which means for sure she's going to win.
There you go.
Yeah, that's really
cool. So we're down to a daily double, I believe.
The daily double does begin in race 11. It is the Clark, the 150th running of the Clark. No longer the Clark handicap, even though it's a handicap. Don't let anybody confuse you. You like handicaps, Dan? You feel okay about them?
Listen, I have no problem with handicaps. I think that's the way to go. One of the reasons that maybe horses aren't running that often, though, is because of the handicap system. I like throw 130 on a horse if he doesn't want to run against grade 1. Do you want to run him in a grade 3 and pick your spot? Oh, I'm going to pick my spot. I'm not going to run against the big boys. I'm going to find a nice, easy grade 3 stake where I'm getting equal weights with inferior horses. No, load the grandstand on them.
Pick up
1,200-pound beasts.
Yeah, pick up the refrigerator is what you're saying.
Pick up the refrigerator. Pick up Issel. Get him on his back and let's go.
Poor Dan. 6'9" Dan. That guy, Illman, I got to tell you, that guy doing radio with that guy, at least once a week, he would just have a cut on the top of his head from where he bumped into something. I mean, just at least once. He's so tall. The world is not made for him at all. Like
Yeah, he's had it tough.
It's not. That NBA pension's really taking him out. Race 11 is the Clark. We try to do something fun for these races, and in this case, no different. So we will be in the theme of the holidays. If a horse has a chance, we're going to save the neck. And if the horse doesn't, we're going to not save the neck, Clark. All right, so we'll go with that. We will give this a chance. By the way, we're not talking about the horses. We're simply talking about the movie. Mile and an eighth on the dirt at Churchill for the grade 2 Clark. $600,000 in the kitty here. For this one, I thought this actually turned out to be a fun field, Dan, because like you said, with all of the other race options now, either overseas, Breeders' Cup, whatever it is, this race falls in that middle sandwich of whatever else the tracks are trying to figure out with the Cigar Mile. You know, the race is on December 26th at Santa Anita. There's so many things in the middle competing for this spot. The Clark, I thought this was a pretty good field, though.
I think it's an excellent field, and what I like about it is not only the overall quality, the mixture of 3-year-olds and older horses, but the fact that you've got several speed horses and you've got several deep closers, and this could become a really tactical race.
All right, so we'll go through this horse by horse. We've got how many? 12 to talk about, or 10? 10 to talk about with Uno Mas Bourbon in the 10, but we'll start with Bowlesy. Frankie Dettori gets the mount here, the number 1 horse. Dan, we saving the neck or no?
I'm going to save the neck with this guy. I just have a feeling he's a little bit under the radar coming into this race. It looked like he was starting to figure it out in the spring at Oaklawn when he ran 4th in the Razorback. Tough post, wide trip, and then all of a sudden he disappears. He comes back, and they're asking him to run 1 mile and an eighth at Churchill over a sloppy track against Hit Show. I'm willing to forgive that effort. Boy, Frankie rode the hair off this guy last time out on the lead. I thought it was a great ride. It took Hit Show the length of the stretch to beat him. They're putting the blinkers on. I don't think he needs the lead. I have a feeling he's getting good. He's going to be a price. Whether he's good enough to beat this field, I'm not sure. But save the neck for me, Clark.
There you go. Just like his dad, maybe doing his best running at 5. He's a son of gun runner here. Look, 2 wins and 10 career starts. I'm going to not save the neck here, but this is one where if this horse wins, I'm not going to go, oh, how the hell did that happen? It doesn't feel like that at all. And so I think he's one that, like you said, Frankie rode just perfectly last time at Keeneland. 3rd in the form cycle here. All of the things seem to line up that he would have his best effort here. I just happen to think there are other better horses in this race. I do think, though, that he's a must-use in an exactor trifecta kind of play. Grand Aspen is the 2 horse here. Gerardo Corrales gets the mount for Jonathan Thomas. Was not very good in that aforementioned Fayette last time out. Are we saving a neck here?
I can't save the neck on this one. Don't save the neck for Grand Aspen, even though he had the excuse in the Fayette. It was his first start off of a lengthy layoff in a very tough spot. And you go back to the Pegasus, what real chance did he have in that race, all things considered, looking back? But just he had to run better in one of those 2 races for me to like him. He does have some tactical speed and a little bit of back class. I mean, that number 3 starts back puts him squarely in the mix, but just I wish he had better current form.
Yeah, I agree with you. Even second off the layoff. I am not going to save the neck for the number 2 Grand Aspen here as well. I'm with you. I'll be interested to see, because the Harlan Holiday is actually coming up in a couple of weeks. We'll see White Barrio in that race ahead of the Pegasus as well. And so I was a little surprised to see him in this spot, but frankly, I think it's probably 2.5 times the prize money. So it makes sense that they'd be running here at Churchill, at least trying to pick off some kind of check there. Krupe is in the 3 hole here. I'll go ahead and go first. This is an interesting one to me, Dan, because this horse, so much of its recent form was over wet tracks, and we're not going to have that here, but we are going to have cold weather. So it's interesting. How much is this horse going to be comfortable with the track here? Has never tried Churchill Downs before. I'm a guy who personally really trusts Todd Pletcher to place horses in good spots for graded races. I'm sure I'm not alone in that one. I'm going to go don't save the neck. I think we see his best running later on in this form cycle, but I'll go ahead and very reluctantly toss Krupe in this group.
I had similar trouble, but I'm going to go the other way and say save the neck for two reasons. A, this distance is what he wants. A
I agree.
mile and an eighth or longer is what Krupe wants. He's going to get the pace he needs, and that's key. And I'm not sure he got that in the Arthur's Ride race, 2 starts back in the Whitney, where that horse just wired the field. And I don't think he had a fairly run race last time out in the Woodward. 4-horse field, they were really intent on trying to keep him as close to the pace as possible, because in a 4-horse field, how fast are they going to be going? And unfortunately for them, they actually ended up going pretty fast. And I think getting him into the race early worked against him. I think he's going to run on. Like you, I kind of think maybe he's better as a second or third candidate, but I wouldn't be surprised if he runs over the top of all of them in the stretch.
Oh, sure. That makes sense to me as well. Paroli's the 4 here. 20-1 Edgar Morales for Mike McCarthy here. Did win last time over the distance at Keeneland. Comes into this one essentially 4th in the form cycle. How about this for the last 3 tracks? Pleasanton, Charlestown, and Keeneland. And he wins at Keeneland of all things, Dan. How about that?
Pleasanton, yeah. Listen, he's a high class son of Battle of Midway. He doesn't want to win in Northern California. He doesn't want to win.
That's right, Battle of Midway. You deal with that. How about that? Yeah,
exactly.
That being saving the neck for him. How about that?
I'm not saving the neck for him, because I think this is just a little bit too tough for him, and I don't think he has the right running style. I do respect the fact he was second in the Gold Cup at Santa Anita at this distance last year, but that $100,000 optional claiming win, I'm surprised you and Issel didn't sort of pony up and with that pension money and spring it and run him in the Clark under your colors. But don't save the neck for me.
I'm saying the same thing. How about that? Sorry, Dan, that we didn't claim Paroli when he was not available in that. I guess he was available in that race. How about that? Could have bought him for a 5-year-old gelding for $100K. You know, that's what everyone in horse racing wants to do. Most Wanted is the first of the 2 Brad Cox trainees here. He'll be on Rabeau & Co. with me on ESPN Louisville at 11 o'clock on Friday. You can hear Brad talk about both Most Wanted and Hit Show. Then no reading between the lines. I no longer do that, Dan Illman, with the Cox trainees. Do you make anything of, I know this is horse racing and not jockey racing, of Florent Giroux staying on Most Wanted but not on Hit Show?
No.
Okay. All right. Next question.
I don't make anything. Now I noticed it now. Thank you. I appreciate it. I don't follow the jockeys at all in that situation. Who knows if Flo picked him or Brad said, Flo, you're riding this one. We have no idea. Okay. By the way, when you talk to Brad, ask him about Idiomatic's half-sister who's debuting on Saturday in the first race. Supposedly the word is out. That's all I'm going to say. The word is out.
Yeah, a little bit.
Most Wanted. Save the neck for me. Unbeaten from 4 lifetime starts. I liked his performance in the Oklahoma Derby. He never got a breather at any point in that race. He took pressure, and they went 23 and change, 23 and change, 23 and change. That's pretty quick for a 4th-time starter, going 1 mile and an eighth for the first time, and he was real game to win. Now, it wasn't the strongest field in the world. He's going to be facing tougher from a pace perspective as well as a class perspective, but I have a feeling this guy's pretty good, and I think he's going to give a good account of himself, and kind of looking forward to seeing if he's one of these late developers that becomes a nice handicap horse here where everybody else goes to Saudi and Dubai to play next year early.
Yeah, he could add, frankly, the Son of Candy Ride Most Wanted. He could add to that list of those 4-year-old horses next year, Dan, in these kinds of races that are going to be really, at the top of the heap. I totally agree with you. I think he's absolutely a save the neck kind of horse. I agree very much about the Oklahoma Derby. I thought that was wildly impressive. He fought. Not only is he very fast, he also has a ton of fight in him, which is not always the case to have both of those things in a single thoroughbred. But yeah, had to do a ton of work against EJ Won the Cup. Are we worried about saying things like he had to do a lot of work against EJ Won the Cup?
Not necessarily because of the way the race was run, in that he again had to do a lot of the heavy lifting from start to finish, and that could have compromised maybe a situation where after that sort of race flow, you're not going to go off and win by 10, especially in only your 4th start trying the distance for the first time. Is it a class test? This is a huge class test for him. And if he goes off anything shorter than maybe 3-1, I think you're supposed to be a little bit leery betting him to win. But from a pure contender standpoint, he's one of the ones.
owned by the Wests, is most wanted. So all of the connections we would expect to win the Clark with him. We go to the 6 horse. It is Hit Show. He'll be the morning line favorite. I'm guessing probably the betting favorite as well, Dan, for this one, given the connections Tyler rides. For Brad Cox here, has won his last 3, grade 3, grade 2, grade 2. Mountaineer, Churchill Downs, and Keeneland. We've heard of those places. Dan, I assume you are saving the neck for Hit Show.
Don't save the neck for me on Hit
Oh,
Show.
there we go.
Listen, he's been managed beautifully by Brad, just like Asmussen has been managing his horses beautifully. That's why he's running in races like the West Virginia Governor, and they found the Lucas Classic, and they found the Fayette. I will give Hit Show his props for several reasons. A, he's good. B, he's gutty. He really wants to beat you in a head-and-head fight. And C, he's the more tactical horse in this race, the most tactical horse. You've got your speeds, you've got your deep closers. He's going to be sitting in the middle, ready to take advantage of the tired speeds while getting the jump on the deep closers. There's a lot to like about Hit Show. I just wonder if this is one too many. A hard campaign so far for him. His buyer speed figure plunged 7 points in his most recent start. This is a good field he's going to be facing. Horses with perhaps a little bit more upside. And then when you factor in the price, and I agree with you, I think he's going to be the favorite in this race. I'm willing to take a slight swing again. So don't save the neck. It's a completely contrarian opinion.
Got it. I'm not going to be a contrarian here. Please save me the neck in this case on Hit Show. I think the gritty part is what really does stand out. He is very fast. He's very capable. But you're right. If he gets next to another horse, he wants to be ahead of that horse. There's a lot of value in that. So I'll definitely be using him on my tickets come Friday. I just think, we've seen it at Churchill last 2 times out. He's won at the distance, 4 for 8 at the distance lifetime. This is something that he just does. And so 4 for 5 this year. I'm with you. Maybe it's a lot of a campaign, but frankly, we're talking about his last 4 races being stretched out since May. And so, it's not as though it's too much, but I get it. It is all of his running since May, frankly. So there you go. Moving on to Rattle and Roll, a horse that we all fell in love with last year, because he ran on short rest and went ahead and won the damn thing at Churchill Downs in the Blame after winning the Pimlico Special, of course. Did try the Foster, came up second last year, has not really been part of a big factor in a race, frankly, since that time. Did run the one time in that Lucas Classic in the slop. I think he's more capable than what he showed in that Lucas Classic. Dan, do you have him saving the neck or not?
Save the neck, absolutely, for Rattle and Roll. I'm expecting a gigantic performance from him in here because I think the pace is going to be fast, and his last race showed he could still step. It was the Lucas Classic. It was his first race in about a year. He catches a wet track going 1.1 1/8, and it's not like he was beating a million. He was running on at the end of that race with a sneaky little gallop out after the fact. I think he needed it. I think it was really interesting that Kenny McPeak skipped the Fayette because he thought he could get this horse into the Breeders' Cup Classic. And if you remember, he was on the AE list in the Breeders' Cup Classic, and they really, really wanted to run. And it would have been interesting to see how he would have fared considering the way that pace shaped up. I think he's going to get pace here. We know he likes Churchill Downs, and I'm just not betting against Kenny McPeak and Brian Hernandez Jr. anymore. It burned me too
Not
many
these
times.
days. You stole one thing from me there, and that's that. I think you're right. I think Kenny really wanted this horse in the Breeders' Cup. He really did. He meant it. Like all the things. I think he thinks he's got something, and who the hell am I to doubt that? So I'd break it down more than that, but there's nothing to break down. That's it. That's the whole thing. That's it. Oh man. All right. So some horses that I do like coming up here. Red Route 1 is the 8 horse. That is a save the neck for me. Almost a no doubter here for me. Frankly, this is a horse who's had no success at Churchill Downs, but hear me out. Wins the Cornhusker last out in the grade 3. Before that, though, here is my one legitimate concern about Red Route 1, but I think he's got a shot here at least. He seems to need medication to win these races. Lasix, whatever it might be. He seems to need some kind of added thing to win at this level. I'm hoping that we get some of that form like he had, in the Oklahoma Derby or something like that, where he ran without Lasix, lost by a neck, that kind of thing. Hoping we get back to some of that form. I worry about the medication angle here, Dan, but I do think he's a really talented horse. I think there's plenty of speed out front for him, who's going to be mid to back of the pack, frankly, to close into that long stretch of Churchill Downs. He's a save the neck for me.
He's a don't save the neck for me for several reasons. One personal reason. And before the Pimlico Special this year, I was standing just outside the paddock in this nice giant little ledge, and Red Route One decided he didn't like the cut of my jib, and he took one look at me and kicked back and left an imprint of his heel plate right in the wall about 6 inches away from my face. So I decided I didn't like Red Route One after that, and was very pleased when he finished fourth. That being said, he then came back and he got the better of Hit Show in the Cornhusker last time out. I've never liked this horse. He's talented. He's been managed very, very well. I generally hate horses with his running style, which is odd that I like Rattle and Roll while I don't like Red Route One. I just think Rattle and Roll is a better horse than Red Route One. And I think this layoff is a little bit concerning. We haven't seen him since July. Now, maybe just Steve decided, listen, we're going to avoid the big heavy hitters in races at Saratoga. He can't compete with those horses. We want him fresh for the Clark and early in the year. But I'm going to take a wait and see approach.
Okay. All right. Next up is the 9-horse Cook Creek. Luis Saez gets them out here 6-1 on the morning line from Mike Maker. This horse, last 4 out, Dan, win, second. That second was in the Lucas Classic in the slop with Hit Show by a neck. Gets a little bit of a freshening here. That's a good angle with the Mike Maker horses. The good thing about Mike Maker, by the way, as far as the past performances are concerned, is you always have 300 of something as an example. It's one last out, 335, 61 to 80 days off, 708 examples. Like you always just have those things. Seems to be a good angle for him. I think just because this horse is one that's been showing a proclivity for being near the front and wanting to win, this is a save the neck for me. Luis Saez also having a really nice meet at Churchill Downs. I know that doesn't matter to you, but for those reasons, look, he's a gamer of a horse and he's got a great jock. I'll take, especially if I get 6-1. My goodness.
I agree. Save the neck for me on Cook Creek as well. Maker has a knack for claiming horses. And usually what he does is he claims them, some with back class like Cook Creek. When you go back in his PPs, you'll notice that he was graded stakes placed as a 2-year-old. He won a little stake at Delaware as a 2-year-old. And usually what he does is either switches surfaces or stretches them out drastically in distance. With Cook Creek, he just said, I think this horse is okay. Took him off the layoff, and look what he's done with him. I liked his Lucas Classic. He fought very hard. I am concerned that as he's gotten older, he's turned into a need the lead type. And with a horse like Bowlesy, get it with the blinker switch, and a horse like Most Wanted, I wonder if he's going to get cooked up in a hot pace going a demanding distance. But I think if he can sit a little bit, a nice 3-wide tracking trip, he'll be in the thick of things at a price turning for home. So he's a contender.
Yeah, I agree with you. 10 is Uno Mas Bourbon. That is a 3-year-old son of Macho Uno, probably the cheapest bred horse in this race. No offense to any of the connections there. Just, hey, this is but this is horse of a lifetime stuff, man. When you can breed a horse for 10 grand and he's well over $250,000 in earnings as a 3-year-old. That's what I'm talking about. Those are our favorite horses here on the Horse Racing Happy Hour. Francisco Arrieta keeps them out here 20-1. He's a don't save the neck for me. And it has a lot less to do with the horse himself. I actually think as a 4-year-old, we're going to see him in a bunch of either grade 3 or high level allowances, that kind of thing. I think this is just a little bit too much for him. I think he's a fine horse. I think as a 4-year-old, he's going to be totally fine. Rack up a bunch of checks. Don't save the neck on Friday, but man, next year, I'm going to be looking for him.
I was going to say, don't save the neck for me this year. Save the neck for next year's Clark. Maybe we'll see Mas Bourbon in this race next year as a 4-year-old because distance is there and he's slowly figuring this out. And I think Ian Wilkes is slowly figuring out that maybe this guy's better on dirt. And it took him a few races to figure this out. I think this is a situation of too much too soon against a very salty field. But I think next year he could be a really interesting horse if they manage him right.
It's the kind of horse that blows up the trifecta too, isn't he?
Because he's going to be picking up pieces in the stretch, and he's going to be trying hard. And if these speeds come back, you could see a wild result. I mean, he could be a 20-1 with the same running style as Krupe, and he might have more upside.
Saturday we'll have the Kentucky Jockey Club. It is a Derby prep. It is all the things. A couple of years ago, we had the top 3 winners of this race were White Abario and 2 other horses that ended up in the Derby. It was the Remsen of that year. We're getting into that time of year, Dan, where we start to have to watch these races, certainly the maidens as well, at places like Gulfstream and Churchill Downs and all of those things. Is there a horse? Obviously, the return of Jonathan's Way here.
Sure.
We saw him in the Breeders' Cup Juvenile. It just didn't happen for him that day. Do you make much of a race like that for a Jonathan's Way, or are you going to be using him on Saturday?
I think you have to use him. I think it has to concern you a little bit. I would have liked to have seen Joel be a little bit more aggressive out of the gate with this horse, as he was in the Iroquois. I think they were very, very patient with him in the Breeders' Cup Juvenile, and I think that worked against him the way that race was run. He's obviously very talented. I remember before his debut at Saratoga, I mean, I was there that day. The clockers were buzzing about him like he was a good thing, and he ran like a good thing because he misses the break and he makes this big sweeping move and wins. I watched his workout on November the 23rd. It was a really interesting workout for Phil Bauer in that he put Jonathan's Way in behind two fillies. One of them, of course, was Too Sharp. And the other one was a filly that ran today at Parks and got beat at a short price. So I'm not sure what to make of that. And Jonathan's Way, boy, was really urged along to keep up with those two. Now, those two are older quality horses. But to me, Jonathan's Way, and I know he's a good workhorse because the clockers loved him at Saratoga. Sure. He was being urged along to keep pace. It worries me a little bit, especially at a short price. I do think he's the horse to beat based on his prior credentials. But I want to take a chance with the rail horse. He's not joking. He's trying dirt for the first time. Josie Carroll is a very good trainer up at Woodbine, and she is very cautious with her horses. So the fact that she's here, I think, is an extremely good sign. He's by Practical Joke. His dam was a stakes winner on the dirt. You go back a few generations, there's a lot of class and dirt in this family. And this horse just turned the corner going 2 turns last time out at Woodbine. I mean, he just cruised up with a big 4-wide move on the turn and kept on rolling. So we're going to learn a lot more about this horse, obviously trying dirt and stepping up in class. But he's battle tested. He's got 4 races. The Beyer speed figures are moving the right way. And I think he's tactical enough to work out a trip. He just thinks like he's maturing from start to start.
There's a couple of interesting ones that are deeper in the past performances here. First Resort here for Ian Hardy's coming out of that Summer Stakes, the grade 1 up at Woodbine. But before that, ran a really good second behind Showcase in the Saratoga Special over the summer. Gets to try the 2-turn dirt route for sure. I'm fascinated by Dapper Moon in this spot because that's a horse that tried the 2 turns last time in the Street Sense for getting out to that distance after being in that Breeders' Futurity, and just gets a little closer and a little bit better every time. Is going to try to be part of that early pace. If Ricardo Santana Jr. can keep that horse away from, 22 and change or 46 and change, something like that, I think that horse has a chance on Saturday for Dallas Stewart, who I hold in high regard with 2-year-olds for sure. And so I think there's something there. It's just a horse that they very clearly think can do the 2 turns, can do the route that way. And so that's a horse, especially at an 8-1 price. I think we might get longer than that by the time we get to the gate. I think that's an interesting play here, Dan.
I think it's a very interesting horse because he showed he's fast enough to win a race like this already. Just look at that speed figure from his second lifetime start at Saratoga. And I think he has excuses for his last 2 races. In the Breeders' Futurity, you remember, East Avenue took that field wire to wire. Dapper Moon was the one doing the hard lift and chasing this horse all the way around. And I just don't think that's his preferred running style. And last time out in the Street Sense, that was not a good trip. Kind of in tight, made an early move and then tired. I think this time around, he's going to let the speeds go. He's going to sit back. He's going to try to make one run. And yeah, if he can get back to that race at Saratoga, he's a strong contender. And there should be speed for him in here.
Yeah, we saw the very best of the 2-year-olds this summer was at Saratoga. The Ellis program has become very, very good, very competitive, and I expect it to get even better in the coming years. But certainly this year, all the talk was about those 2-year-olds, including East Avenue. There you go, and Jonathan's Way and all those kinds of horses as well. Well, here's Dan Illman. Where do people find you and all the very professional videos that you make?
Well, our professional.
Where they find Mike Beer is really the question, isn't it? I mean, that's.
Well, Mike Beer's the star of the show. Everyone knows that. That's why they tune in. But every great kicker needs somebody that's going to hold the ball.
That's right.
And that's me. That's my job.
That's right. That was me with Gandolfo, and now we don't have a kicker. That's right. Yeah.
Well, now you don't have a kicker, so that's fine. I mean, you got to.
You go for 2 all the time. Hell of a thing.
You gotta go for 2 all the time. You can find the great Mike Beer, and I'll be on those videos just setting them up. Daily Racing Form YouTube channel. Really nice content. Plus, we got some other really great handicappers. David Aragona, Gino Bacola, especially. Twitter at DRF_Dan Illman. I'll be covering a lot of the races like Parks today, and we'll be looking at Laurel Racetrack, one of my
back to Laurel this weekend. Yes, they've okayed the track and all that. Right?
Well, no training tomorrow because they've sealed the track tonight because of the incoming rain, which could cause a little bit of a problems. But fingers crossed, we'll be back in action because there are some stakes races on tap Friday and Saturday.
I'm terrified of what Zach wants to say here.
I just want to say that clarify for me again that you both confirmed you're excellent ball holders. Very good at holding balls. Got it.
So basically, we just pulled a Kelsey, what's her name, from the Indiana Fever. She said that, I believe, when with Caitlin Clark in the press conference. That was a shame. Yeah. But so then you've done it again. You're ruined my reputation again. My reputation already took a hit coming on this show, and now that's it. Thanks. Hey, at least I'm getting a sweatshirt tomorrow. Great.
If you get deliveries on Thanksgiving, I'd like to know your mailman. That would be spectacular.
Sorry, Friday. I have to wait.
Look for a video of.
By the way, Zach, thanks so much for pointing that out to the fan. I appreciate it. To the one fan. Thanks.
The one fan. Mike Beer's like, I'm done working with that guy. We're out of here.
Absolutely not.
Well, look to his Twitter feed for when he burns our hoodie on Friday in the middle of the street where he lives there, where he's allowed to have a fireplace. His name is Dan Illman. Follow him on Twitter at DRF_Dan Illman. Dan, we appreciate you, buddy. We'll talk to you next time.
Yeah, I'll talk to you soon.
All right, there you go. Dan Illman joins us here on the Horse Racing Happy Hour. We appreciate him very much. Zach, I'm adding you to the stage reluctantly, but just play the music and get us out of here. We need to get that. This is bad stuff. I have a question for Illman if he can.